Alright, so before you go too far planning out any detail for the starting at the basement, you want to make sure you get the setbacks right. And so here we've just done an indicative setback which is based on the fire rating, but I've had a better look at the size of those roads, and if you're starting to plan out with a bit more detail, you'll need to allow for a few other things. So firstly you'll have a setback from the side boundary. I'm just going to copy a reference plan across for that. And so that'll need to be at least 1200. And then you'll need to allow another 5 metres for the road. And then another 1800 for the footpath beside that. So that's what I've been saying, there's no point going too far and putting a lot of detail in before you've really worked out all the requirements properly. And okay, so with the massing I've got there, that's easy to adjust. Just using the areas there, that can be adjusted, but if you've done walls and other things, of course that'll take a bit more time. Okay, so just adjusting that massing, I'll come back and fix the other things in a minute. And I'm just going to toggle the massing off actually, and I'll fix that all together once everything else is worked out. So then from the other side, this building here will need a footpath beside it as well. So again, I'm just going to copy a reference plan across. And then make it, well, I think it's based on the existing measurement 2200. And then coming across 6.5 metres, again based on the existing road. And then you have another setback, which again is just based on, oh no, sorry, that'll be a new one, so it is based partly on what's existing on the site though, so that'll be 1400. And so looking at the floor there, or actually even going down to the pad on the bottom level. Oops, that's not the pad. Okay, I'll need to go to another view to select that. Okay, so what you can do, because you may need to make further adjustments, is align the edges of the pad and the floors to those reference planes and then lock them. Okay, so here again, actually I'll just make sure I've got the right reference plane, so I'm going to draw in dimensions. And then again back to editing the pad. It doesn't really matter which view. And so again, aligning and blocking save a lot of time. And the back there will probably come back as well, but I'll do that once I've worked out some of the car park planning. So finishing that. Then I can do the same with the floors, of course, so on each level. I've only got the one floor there at the moment, but again, when I go to edit that boundary, that can be aligned with the same reference plane and locked. So even if it's already in line, you can use the align tool, if you don't know, to lock, or just bring up the lock symbol. And so now, if I move that reference plane, of course the floor and the pad go together. And so that's really important when we start looking more at families. That's one of the most important concepts, just understanding how to build up those hierarchies. And so then with the car park layout, I might go just to car park level 1. So I'll obviously have to fix up the graphics there quite a bit, but for now I might just put a wall, and yeah, we're just going to have to allow for some tanking, so I'm just going to make that a fairly generic thickness. And again, another secret when you're planning out for schematic drawings is not to overcomplicate things. So if you try to put all the construction in from the beginning, you're just creating work for yourselves, and it's much better to use simpler walls and massing where possible. So in this case, I'll just start with a generic 300mm, edit type, duplicate, and make a new one. So we'll call this basement wall, and put in size 450. So this will include tanking in with the wall thickness. And I'll just make the thickness there 450 without adding extra layers. And later, when we know the construction, then those layers can easily be added to that wall type. And then it's always a good idea to set the course display. And so if you're not using that, that's one of the most useful options when you're doing schematic drawings as well. So I'm just going to set the course fill colour there to black. And that's pretty typical for these sorts of drawings. Just going to click OK, and then using pick there. Actually, why don't I have pick walls? That's a bit weird. So I'm going to go and just get the height up to ground floor for now. Make sure it's on finished face exterior, and I'm just going to draw one wall and see what's happening there. So a good trick when you are creating wall types, don't cancel it without drawing anything, because sometimes you'll lose it. So I've just drawn that wall there so that if I go back to the wall tool, it will give me the option there. So yeah, I don't know why that's not coming up with all the options there. Oh, sorry, I'm thinking of 2016. Okay, so this is 2015, of course, so that's fine. Okay, so I can just use the pick lines tool to pick my floor, and then make sure it goes to the right side. 2015. They made this a bit better with 2016. So you can see there it's just trying to go to the outside, and I might just choose that and then flip it afterwards, and that'll work almost as well. And really this is just to do some rough planning anyway. So then you can start to work out a potential column grid. And that's really the main thing I want to look at. So with the grid tool, now it's really important actually before I do this, when you make your grids, you want to make sure that you've got all the levels that you think you might need. So here you can see I've got terrace roof and then roof below that, but I may want another floor level. There's definitely a chance, the way I've been looking at the planning, that and you've definitely got the option as well of adding in an extra floor. So I'm going to just put that in, even if I don't end up using it. It'll help when you're setting out the grids if you have all those levels. If you go too far making your grids before you have those levels, you don't need every level worked out, but you basically need the bottom and the top level. Because when you make a grid, it will use those levels to set the height of the grid. So actually I'll do this back on Carpark 1, making the grid again, and we'll do it the European way and do the grid lines centred on the wall. So that means I should be able to use pick lines and just pick one of the walls. You can see there the grid bubble has gone to the bottom, which you may not want. So I'll undo that and see if I pick the other wall, if that's going to happen. So you can see there that the grid bubble has actually gone to the top and it's turned off at the bottom. And that's simply because of the direction the wall has been created in. So when you create the walls clockwise, essentially, that's got this wall facing down, the other wall's facing up. And so walls do have a direction, and so options like that will determine the orientation of things like grids that you create from those. You can just stretch this up now. And the reason you want to think about the end the grid bubble goes on is because if you just whack them in and don't think about that and think you can just change it afterwards, well, of course you can, but you've got to do it on every level. So if you go through these different levels, you can see that the grid bubble is on the end that it started on. If I'd turned it off and then turned it on at the other end, I'd need to go and do that on every story, because grids are a funny one. They're a bit, they're partly a normal physical object in that they display in all views, but they're also a bit like an annotation object in that they have display elements that are unique to each view as well. Okay, so just like all the things you have on the Annotate tab. So just got to think about those things, a bit like levels. And so there I can then copy that grid across back to Carpark 1, copy it to the other side. And then, of course, you've probably come across this before, if you want to renumber your grids, I can't make that one 1 straight away. I can make it 1A, but I can't make it 1 until I change number 1 to something else. And that'll end up probably being 6. So now I can come back and make this one 1. And then you can copy these across. You can create additional grids in different ways, but copying them is obviously a good way in many cases. And so I'm going to copy this across. What do I end up with for the spacing there? So it'll be about 5 metres, so we'll just make that 5,000 initially. It might change a little bit. And then the same on the other end. And what you're aiming for is a span of no more than 8 metres. So I'm just going to measure between these two grid lines now. And you can see I've got 19,550. And so if I copy the grid line across there, 8,000. And this one, 8,000 as well. Oops. And so yes, I've got, what's that left in between? So 3.5 metres. So we can maybe look at bringing that out, but we want to have a decent space for the roadway. So yeah, so I'll need to look at some options there. Maybe these can actually come back a bit. So those can come back potentially to be less than that slightly, so maybe 4.5. This will allow a bit more for the core essentially. So, and then this span could be 8,000, and going the other way. Okay, so then if you've got the car parking spaces running along one of these walls, just go and use the parking components. And I'll just place one, well actually we'll do a disabled one at the end maybe. So just using the align tool, and then You have to check the spacings of these. We just want to get this roughly set out. Okay, so I'll make that a standard one. And so, again, going the other way, you want to aim for 8 metre spans. So with the grid tool, going left to right, because I want my bubbles to be on the left-hand side. And then I can name this one A, so that then the next one will be, of course, B. And, of course, I've forgotten the one on the wall, so I'll just copy that up. So that will be C, and I'll have to go and make this one, well, I have to make that one C1 for now, and then we can go back and make this one, well, that will be B, and then this one can be A, and then now this can just be C, and then the rest should get numbered automatically, or with a letter automatically. And so then again I can look at the spacing or the span for those. So again, aiming for 8 metres, but you need it to line up with your car parking as well. Okay, so you can start with a setup like that, and then you'll need to work out some of your car parking layout. And so here, I'll look at the, forgotten actually what the minimum for a disabled car parking space is. I don't think it's 3.5. I'll double check. And so there, if we have another car space, then it's not going to line up. So that wouldn't work. If you were going to have that layout, then you'd potentially need to move this to here and have something in at the end there that's not a car space, or maybe you have a bike space. And you can look up the allowances for small car spaces. You can have a certain number of those as well. And then the columns can encroach on the car spaces a little bit as well. So if you go and start placing some columns, you can use the Add Grids option, but you'd need to know what all your grids are, so it's probably not worth going too far with that. Instead, I'm just going to go and load in, using structural columns, a rectangular column.
Danny?
Yep, sure.
With our schematics, do we need to add in structural plans as well, like the car parks and stuff, or is it just full plans?
What do you mean structural plans?
Because like in the structural plans, it shows all the piers and all the, what's it called, all the beams and stuff in it, but like in floor plans it doesn't really show it. Like
Oh, you won't need to show the beams in plan. You should indicate them in section, definitely.
Yeah.
And you definitely need to show the columns as well. Yeah. But no, not full structural. I mean, the engineers would do that anyway. But you need to allow for those things. And also, your sizes won't be right. Once you go to the engineers, they'll probably change a lot of those things anyway.
Yeah.
But you just need to make sure that what you're proposing is possible, essentially. So, so you definitely need to indicate all those things, yeah. You don't need to do reflected ceiling plans, though. So yeah, you won't need to show all of the beams, but the ones that come up in section definitely need to show those. Okay, so here have you come across this issue when you're placing columns? Have you noticed that often when you first go to place them, they're invisible?
Yeah, because they drop under.
Exactly, yeah. So, and there's a reason for that. It's because engineers do the footings first, and they set the structural tools up mainly for the engineers to use. And so it does make sense to have it like that. It's not an accident. But, of course, for architectural work, you tend to start by working from the ground up. So you definitely want to make sure you change that option. But that's something everyone has to remember when you're placing columns with Revit if you're not an engineer. And then the level there, I'll set just to ground floor. Also, which way have you been shown to do columns? Going all the way through the building or
Just
on each level?
floor.
Yeah, that is technically the better way of doing it. If you're just doing rough layouts at first, you can actually take them through levels and then just join them to your floors. But if you're doing, or if you're using programs like Navisworks, or even have engineers trying to use Revit to do their structural calculations and things like that, then yeah, the columns do need to be separated on each floor. So I'm just going to place a column there. You can see I've just got it starting on this level and going up to the next one. And then now that I can see it, I'll adjust the size. So that wouldn't be big enough. And so let's go and edit that and actually see if we've got, yep, we've got the next size up. Anyway, well, that's too big. So I'm going to duplicate that and make a new size. I'm going to make it 300 by 600. Which might be about the size you need. Something like that. May not even need to be that wide. But as long as you've got some idea, and you can copy those, of course, to the other grids. And they should move with the grids, even if you haven't used that at grids option. As long as you align them with the grids, they'll definitely associate themselves with it. So those are the things you need to think about as you're planning the car park, which you can do even before you've got an idea of the form of the building above, because you do know the requirements for the car park, and it should help you with the layout on the upper levels, because the core there, in this case I might have that in this section in the middle, and that will probably continue through to the upper levels. And of course the outer walls will probably relate to the walls on the upper levels as well. And also might even give you an idea of the overall footprint of the building going towards the rear there. Okay, so I mean you'll probably be doing a lot of back and forth, so once you've done some of the car parking, got some maybe idea about the planning you're going to have there, then you could move back to the upper levels. And so I'll come back to you later and go through massing a little bit more and show you some different approaches you can use there. But is that clear? So the main thing, I suppose, to take from that, 8 metres is a good benchmark to go for your spans. You can do more or less than that, of course, but that does tend to work out pretty well with things like car parks. Have you seen any bigger spans than that? You will see them well over 10 metres these days, quite often. But again, that's a good one to aim for.
Jenny, how wide would you have a rear?
Well, it depends how many directions, but let's say at least 5 metres, but probably. Oh, so the turning circles, you need to look at the off-street parking standard, and because it does change. But it's fairly easy to work out. They've got templates in there, so just remember that one. So here, yeah, I've renamed them. So this one 2890, and I always have to work through this. Oh, what's expired again? All right. So do you know how to get the standards online? Oh, that's not coming up on your screen. Okay, that's weird. So hopefully you can see it up here. The network today. Here we go. Now it's on your screen. Okay, so I've been getting this document for you from the catalogue, the online resource we've got here, or as part of the TAFE library. And it's something that all students should have access to. But again, because it's a educational service, the documents expire. Do you know who provides the Australian standards? It's a company called SAI Global. So once you start working, especially if you're going to go out on your own, but even if you're working in an architectural office, you'll often need to go and source the standards from them. And they used to be provided by Standards Australia, which is the government body that produces the standards. well, it's an NGO now, but it's essentially funded by the government. And they were almost free years ago, but now they're provided by this private outfit that charges a little bit for them. Standards Australia still produce them, but they're just published through SAI Global. But again, fortunately for you, you've got access to the TAFE library, which you should be able to use to download it, because I'll download it again today, but if you need it after that, you'll need to go and download it yourselves. So to get to the library, so this isn't the site that you'll get, so we'll go to which one is it? This one, I think. No, that's not it either. So which one is it? Sydney TAFE website. That's it. Okay, so that's the site you get as your homepage, isn't it? Should be, I think, yeah. So, okay, so if you go to current students there, and then you, I think, could go to any library. Let's try the St George one. And then catalogues and databases. And then standards online. It's a great resource, actually, because if you have to pay for this, it's fairly expensive. It's come down a bit because the BCA used to be part of it. You had to pay for both, but now that the BCA is free, or NCC, you only have to pay for the standards, so it's a bit cheaper than it used to be. Okay, so you just need to log in again there, and then you'll get a link to this, SAI Global, where you can search for those standards. So 2890. Just put AS 2890. Okay, so then it's, I think the first one, there are going to be a few different documents because you'll get amendments. And so here I'll save the document again for you. There we go. Okay, so that should renew it. And I'll let you look through that to find the turning circles, but it's all in there. There we are. So they've got templates for turning circles there. Yeah, so I'll let you look at that.